Okay, T1 electric project. Thanks, Sergeant.
Have a great evening.
I gave everybody a much bigger map. Bill, if you want a big map.
Your help.
Scott and I and our city's engineer and the two FEMA, the state and federal FEMA guys met again this morning at 10 o'clock. And we're basically going through what we've prepared so far to submit to FEMA and supplying them information that we didn't supply the first time they need to do to finish the application. And after we got done talking, they're talking about next week of being able to sign the documents to submit the applications. So hopefully by next Monday or so.
So as far as that FEMA process works, that is exactly, essentially kind of an application into the FEMA program. So we would propose that we would have these three different types of project worksheets, but those would be the applications that start the project rolling and works through several phases of checking back and make sure that everybody agrees with our numbers and make sure that everybody agrees that we're eligible. And then as we work through the project process, then it would become, we would hear whether the project would be eligible for funds. But that all happens, we would know that we're eligible prior to seeking bids for the project.
The three main things we're working for, Scott, you'll have to help me on this one, is repairs of what we've done so far, mitigation, and reconductoring.
So when you look at the map, two of the things show on it, where you see M1, M2, and M3. There's smaller projects, and those are considered to be mitigation projects because our proposal will be to take what is an aerial line right now and bury it. And there's specific reasons why we would do these three, but mainly they already hook onto an underground line on one end. And certain other reasons, whatever they are.
During the ice storm, we had a lot of lift stations on North State Road. You see M1 and M2. We lost all the lift stations around the lake and a lot of customers. And by bringing that, where Scott's got yellowed and everybody, bringing that back to that main feeder line, which is it was 11 years old, heavy built line, we can maintain, and from those taps, that would be underground, so we could maintain all those customers. That's one big reason. The other reason what Scott just said about bringing, it's already buried past there, so we just go bring it back.
The concept of mitigation is essentially an improvement to the system. So what is aerial right now, we would propose to bury those lines. So FEMA would participate only to the extent of the cost of replacing an aerial line. Okay, so if there is some additional cost to it, the city would stand all the cost.
I thought the engineer said it was within 15% of that.
And if it is within 15%, we can call this a mitigation that FEMA may fund, but I don't know that it'll be.
They don't look, when we talked to them this morning, it didn't look like they were going to do it. They're not for burying lines. But you can see that map, that M1 to M2, and then back down right by the big E. Those were my main three feeder lines to that area. And every single one of them were down during that ice storm. So we try to help the most people we can help at one time to get to what we do, how we make our decisions.
How much out of pocket cost would just come to the city on
That's the 430,000.
yeah. Okay.
On page 2. Yeah, page 12. Page 12 itemizes all the costs, but then on page 2, Scott took it times 15%. That's the 430,000.
talk through this map a little bit more, where you see everything on A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. All of those areas are proposed for cable conductor replacement. Okay, so we will reconductor those areas. Now, within their reconductoring and replacing the wire, you're also updating to meet their new spec, which is essentially a line rebuild. So,
Being what Scott just said, line rebuild, put bigger conductor in, then you move the poles closer together, where you don't go and reuse the same old poles, and in some cases where we've got new poles, we'll reuse them, but it doesn't make any sense to put heavier wiring if you don't have your poles closer together. And what Scott said is basically rebuild the line. But FEMA calls it, whoever wrote this rule, they refer to it as reconducting.
now the one other thing that was new out of our phone call this morning, and deals with what size of conductor that they would put up. If you want to talk about that a little bit, Bill, as far as what we have out there and what they would replace it with.
Right now, the majority of that line that went down is number 4 ACSR, which is probably the size of this pencil. And we're proposing going up to 1/0, which is probably the size of, I don't know what that one is. It's bigger right here. Maybe the next one to it. But it's bigger wire, probably double. Say nothing down there, John.
Don't ring that.
No, I stopped myself. But it's maybe what FEMA wants to do, if they're going to put money into the system, they want it to be, so what happened is less likely to happen again. And it makes perfectly good sense to do it. The first thing that like our line happens, that small conductor breaks, your poles are already stressed, then bam, one pole breaks, and then they all go down.
There is some cost implications, though, about using 1/0 wire. And that's another one of these instances where FEMA will allow you to better your system than what it is right now. They do refer to this as mitigation, but say it's allowable mitigation. It's an allowable mitigation if the cost difference is not more than 15% of the light replacement. And in this case, they have done this around in several instances where they're able to upsize, go to 1/0 wire, stays within this 15% parameter. Okay, that 15% parameter is not in those costs. Okay, so it would be the reconductoring, potentially you add 10, 12, 15%.
Well, basically the cost of the wire stack. Whatever the wire, he doesn't have that itemized. And there are other benefits besides when getting the extra strength of that wire. You have less line loss. You have better voltage at the end of your line. So I mean, there's other things that happen beside it. But what FEMA's looking at is keeping the wire up in the air.
So they'll pay if it's, they'll contribute if it's not more than 15%?
It's the improvement to the pre-existing system. If it's not more than 15%, they will pay.
But according to the documents, it's going to be more than 15?
This won't. This will be less than 15%.
We were talking, Aaron, about converting that overhead to underground. That opens up the whole can of worms. You have to have, you have to test the soil, Scott, for the burial sites or something.
Yeah, and that's another big reason why these are all just specifically identified as mitigation sites. They'll go in under a separate project worksheet in the FEMA. So we have a big one for reconductoring, and this little one for mitigation doesn't kind of muddy the water. Because when you get into burial of the utilities or whatnot, they're going to want an environmental study. And that just kind of holds up the process on everything. Whereas if you're just putting up aerial lines, they don't require the environmental.
Is this project an all or nothing project?
I don't know the answer to that. Because we will put it in as the project, full project, and it gets reviewed so many times along the way. I guess I'm inclined to say that as it gets reviewed, it will change something.
But I mean, let's say we put it in and they come back and they say, you bet you can do that, and we'll, right the way you got it written, we'll give you this amount of money. What happens if we decide we don't have $350,000 or whatever it is, we only have $200,000?